Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. We've got Brent Stone here. He's a good friend of mine and someone who, gosh, we've been talking for I don't even know how many years now about business, money, finance, entrepreneurship in general. Um, we met several years back, and shoot, you would even pop in my office from time to time, and we would just bounce ideas off each other. So this is a great way to kick off the podcast series, talking business, finance, money, budget, you name it. If it has to do with money or entrepreneurship or real estate, we're going to talk about it. So, Brent, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've been doing? I know, just for background here, I would consider you like a what I would call a serial entrepreneur. Someone who just can't help themselves and they just keep starting businesses. It's a great thing, by the way. It's not an insult. And tell us a little bit about your background, what you're doing now, what company or companies you're currently working with and own. Just give us the whole scoop.
Yeah, so thank you for having me on your podcast, David. This is
Yeah, man.
exciting that this is kicking off. So my background is in the marketing space. I started my first business in 2006 and ran that until the beginning of 2020. And that business, I had some success early on and did some things totally wrong financially. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But what's really cool is that I learned a whole bunch along the way and then got married in my early 20s and then worked in advertising as well as having my first marketing business that I had in multiple states at that time. And it was actually in the network marketing space. So I had some really good people by that point that I had recruited and trained and was able to do other things. And I still had cash flow coming in from that income stream. And what's really interesting is that my wife, she's pretty entrepreneurial as well. And we lived really frugally. We got married young and we just always tried to Dave Ramsey everything and not have debt and save and 20 started substantially making some pretty good money outside of both of our jobs in my first. And so in 2016 we started looking for opportunities to buy businesses to kind of reinvest that money into not keeping all of our eggs in one basket. And we actually just kept saving because we didn't find anything we liked. And then 2017 we started a DSO, dental service organization, and it was my wife's brainchild. She actually developed the business plan for that, and it really started to take off. I did I did little things here and there, construction, whatever. I helped with some of the conversations with recruiting our doctors initially, but it was her SOPs, if you will, that really got everything up and going. And then I had conversations with basically some of our management team that we had in place and was a part of that in the beginning, but she outlined everything and did most of all the creation for the SOPs. And it evolved over time because we'd like to think we're critical thinkers, and our model changed over time. And now it's evolved to a point to where we're really blessed to be able to have it almost managed. It kind of runs. And I don't want to say autopilot, but she's definitely involved, 2 hours a week or so, just making sure that, things are running smooth. And I'm
Right.
called on rarely for anything now in that
That's
business.
awesome.
So in
That's
2020,
the dream, right?
man, well,
Well,
sure. Yeah. I mean,
kind of.
there's a lot of stuff there. I mean, it's not like it was easy. It was definitely hard in the beginning. I mean, we've been through so many like downsides, but we've been through a lot of upsides. There's a lot of good things there. We started another business in 2021, me and a business partner in the marketing space, because after I shut down my first business in 2020, it was like the beginning of COVID and some other things going on. And I decided that, I'm going to do some other things. And basically in 2021, figured out that I wanted to still be in marketing and advertising space. I left my advertising job in 2019 because the dental business was taking off and growing pretty rapidly. My wife asked if I could help out a little bit more there, and that was fine. And I was like, I want to get back into the advertising and marketing space. She encouraged me to do so in 2021. So that's where Funnel Force came around, and we do media buying. I'm a media buyer. Because I've been in the space for so long. Now it's relationships all over the place with different media exchanges and demand side platforms and whatnot. And I can pretty much buy from anyone and everyone. And so depending upon, what companies need. And I spend most of my time there. My business partner focuses on our software side of our business. He was a general manager for a software company and a business coaching company up in Northern Virginia. And that's his background. And then he has a good marketing background as well, but he handles a lot of our software side of our business and operations for that.
Awesome. Awesome. So, all right, there's a lot to unpack there. W- what are you currently doing now with Funnel Force? You want to talk about that for just a minute or two and kind of explain how that came to being?
Yeah, sure. So in Funnel Force with the media buying, my background in advertising was radio sales, and I started in 2011, and then John Verstandig sold the station group back in 2015 to a large publicly traded company. Really great business, and actually the CEO and all the C-suite executives of that company, they all came from radio. Really great backgrounds there, but they also saw like, hey, media is changing, and there was a lot of digital media being implemented, and so they got us into the digital products at that point. And I got trained for a couple years, up until I left in 2019 on digital media. And then when I left, I missed it. Uh, and so like, basically like 9 months or so later, I'm thinking, how can I go back into this? I'd like to do it for myself. Because there's obviously there's benefits there. There's drawbacks too, but there's benefits. And so I figured, I'll figure out how to do this on my own. And in late 2021, I did that. And that's Funnel Force. That's where Funnel Force came around. So now being able to do media buying for businesses where, they look at their whole sales funnel and they have different tactics that they buy for. What's interesting is that a lot of businesses, they sometimes just go with whatever a sales rep tells them, and in a lot of cases, I mean, sales reps aren't bad. I mean, they're great, and they're experts in what they sell, but if you can go with somebody that has, like, more of a 50,000-foot view on the entire perspective of what marketing is and all the different tactics available, there's lots of different places you can do different tactics down a business's sales funnel. So there's, awareness, interest, intent, purchase, and then there's advocacy at the bottom, which a lot of people forget about. And Glenn comes in with our CRM and some of our email marketing setup to be able to help businesses perpetuate a lot of the leads that they already have in their database, or to grow their awareness side through proper email marketing and staying in front of potential clients or existing customers. And so we have a really good setup. We really like the idea of being able to put a lot of stuff together like that.
So basically, it's a one-stop shop kind of thing, not a not just a website design, not just a hey, we're gonna create ads for you. It's like a, hey, here's the full picture. Here's what we need to focus on, and kind of breaks it down in that regard. Correct?
Yeah, yeah. There's certain things that we don't do, and there's 2 or 3 really good businesses in Harrisonburg that do similar things. So we're really heavy into social media service as well for small business in Virginia. We have clients. We have some clients in California. We have them as far north as New York. So we have active clients in Florida. We're trying to expand more into Harrisonburg, Virginia, western side of the state market, just because for the social media service, that's an area where we just hired a videographer in-house. So now we're getting into cinema grade quality type of
Right.
content
Doing the
production.
more local thing, and hey, we can shoot the video for you and edit
Yeah.
it and all that. Yeah.
And
Okay.
not only that, but coming from broadcast radio and friends in television and stuff like that, it's like now it's like, okay, well, I understand like what's involved with the entire scoop of putting together a campaign and also the production side now. So it's like we can do all of that.
That's awesome. So, part of the podcast we want to talk about is if you had to go back and do it again.
Oh, man. Yeah.
18-year-old Brent getting started in business, or 22-year-old Brent, whatever it was, when you started. Number one, is there like some sort of personal budget idea that you would have for those, younger folks getting started today? Like, hey, I just graduated high school, or I just graduated college. I'm starting my first, big boy, big girl job kind of thing. What would you say to that person, or what would you say to yourself at that point in life?
Yeah, so I would actually have a budget.
Okay.
I mean, that's something that yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
I would
Right.
I would
Wild.
actually force myself to set money aside in cash to have for a rainy day. I was notorious for just investing like 110% of my revenue back into my enterprise.
Okay.
And so like when Michelle and I got married, I had debt, but it wasn't consumer debt. It was like business debt. And not that business debt's bad, but I had no cash. And so and I had cash flow, but it was like constantly being recycled. And because I was just in growth mode, like 100, and I say 110%, that's accurate. Like I spent more than I made on growing my business all the time for years. And the business grew. And so I was constantly feeding this like monster running behind me. So like that's how I felt.
Okay, so were you trying to get away from yourself then, or get ahead of yourself, or were you just
I just wanted to grow faster.
you were
And I
just
figured if I could
how do
just,
I blow this up and be more
yeah.
successful tomorrow kind of thing?
And I think that that's a common trend even in today's social media that I see people talking about, at least the last couple of years. Now I think people are starting to, there's a new trend and it's like work-life balance and people are trying to like have quality of life and these types of things. That was like so not promoted when I was in, you know,
Right.
18, 19, 20 years
Work
old.
life
It was
balance.
like if you
What is
can
that?
like sleep 4 years later and just work all the time now, that's what you should do. And I
Exactly.
didn't have a family or any responsibility, so I really took to that. And yeah, and that's what I mean, that's what I did. And so interestingly enough, I would save and I would put numbers on it. I would absolutely save 10%. And, you know, for me, like faith's really important. And I would also tithe 10% because a lot of times I would like give here and there. But I think that being disciplined enough in those areas when I wasn't making money,
Hmm.
that would have like really forced me to like manage money differently as I started to make more and more and more. And, thank goodness, my wife and I, when we were engaged, we did the Dave Ramsey course together, and she was like, we're gonna do this." And I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna do this." And then, like, I would come to her with a sales pitch like, "Hey, I need to take $5,000 and go invest it over here," when we didn't have it. And she's
Right.
like, "Yeah, but, like, it's not part of the, you know, the
But it's not
plan or
part of the
whatever."
course.
Yeah, it's definitely, like, going against what Dave's teaching, you know? And there's a lot of stuff, you know, like, looking back on that, there's a lot that I agree with from that, and the course is really good for, like, most people, honestly, like, the debt snowball mindset, a
Yeah.
lot of things, it's really good for people that, like, have no plan in place, but I do believe that if people are running a business in some capacity, like, debt's not bad, you just have to really stay on top of it and emotionally disconnect yourself from, like, the things that you want versus what the business needs, and
Yeah.
then it's healthy, but most people don't operate that way, hence why Dave has a really successful
Right. Yeah.
program.
Most people aren't looking at it from a growth mindset, and that's something I've always said too. Is I've actually done a couple presentations, you know, whether it's BNI or you know investors or you name it. But I actually did one time. I called it Dave versus David, and I was like, "Here's what Dave Ramsey will tell you to do. You know, buy a house in cash." And I was like, "Here's why I think he's wrong." Respectfully, of course, but you know, I just don't think that makes sense if you're responsible. Now that's a giant caveat because not everyone is responsible with money. And for a lot of people, Dave Ramsey's got some great methods, especially people who find themselves like in credit card debt and everything else. Yeah, he's probably got a really great platform, a really great plan that you want to follow. Personally and professionally, that's not something that I have always followed, and I won't say I preach against it, but you know, I've had a couple of clients who, just like you have said, you know, I follow Dave Ramsey, I don't have any debt. It's like, great, you don't have a credit score. How are we going to get you approved for a loan to buy a house? Because you want to buy a house and you want to buy it sooner than later, because by the time you save up $250,000 to buy your first house, the homes aren't going to be worth 250,000 anymore. You're not going to be able to pay cash for it. So how do we get you in something sooner today that appreciates and actually makes you money in the long run? And it's a lot harder to do if you don't have any credit history at all. So one of the things I'll tell people is, hey, use a credit card like a debit card. Don't spend money you don't have. You know, pay it
Yeah.
off in full every month. And then if you do that, you build good credit history. And then we can get you into, you know, some sort of financeable position where we can actually help you. So that's one of the I don't know that we've ever talked about Dave Ramsey before or not, but that was yeah, that's again, just like you said, I think he's got great advice for a lot of people, but like when you get to a certain point, it's like all of a sudden it's like I don't know, it could go either way. So
How about this? How about this? We have a sub 3% more interest rate on our mortgage. Why would I
same.
pay that off?
Exactly. Exactly. When you're sitting at a 299, it's like, okay, well, I can't
Eh,
finance anything
It's
else
lower.
for
It's
that.
like 2.7 something. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like free money.
And if I can make 7% in the market, why would I put my money towards the 299 interest rate? Like, there's a lot of trade-offs.
Yeah,
Not everyone, obviously the market today is different than it was 5 years ago. 299 interest rates don't exist right now, but gosh, those were the days.
it's
But
wild.
yeah, so and for anyone listening who, I haven't quite introduced myself to, my name is David Bates. I am a loan officer with Alcova Mortgage, so NMLS number 1532166. Feel like I have to throw that out there just in case. This is all my personal opinion, not my necessarily professional opinion, although most of the advice should be the same. Yeah, it's as far as talking about rates or markets or anything else, 2020, 2019, even and 2021 were just a completely different animal where rates were so low. It almost didn't make sense not to finance everything you possibly could. And today we're talking, we're in the give or take a 7% interest rate environment here in,
Yeah,
2025, and it's a different animal. So I'm not saying that financing is bad, but you might need to take a few more things into consideration.
yeah,
Because we're not all sitting there with a 299 or a 275 interest rate like we were lucky enough to experience back then.
yeah.
So as far as investment vehicles, Brent, I know again you're I say serial entrepreneur, so obviously entrepreneurship and businesses have been a great vehicle for you. Would that be your primary goal if you're going back to 18 or 22 or whenever and doing it over again, starting fresh? Or would you pick, stock market from K, IRA, or something else? And if so, why?
So that's a really great question. I would probably look at two or three factors. Those factors for me would be, how could I take the level of income that I was at and maximize it to get the most benefit in the long run from it? And knowing what I know now about just appreciating assets, the market, real estate, brand equity, something that, we fight for in business, knowing like how valuable that is if you run a business. I think I would still invest in the entrepreneurial side of me, like kind of reinvesting in myself and the belief that I have that I can, have something exciting and do something with business.
Right.
But I would save a percentage of my income. I would give a percentage of my income. But then where I would save, I would probably have a portion of that going into interest bearing accounts, like maybe like a brokerage account where I would buy shares of like the S&P. But I would do it until I had a chunk of money where I could maybe roll it into like some type of syndicated real estate investment where I could basically get like a tax advantage for like rolling it over into something laterally versus taking a hit on like penalties for like an early withdrawal. And I say that because I wasn't making enough to put $100,000 into a syndicated investment or find my own deal at the time when I was 18, 19 years old, 20 years old, 21 years old. You know what I mean? But like if I had started saving 10% at that point out of what I was making, because man, it would be so different because, I would have figured out a way to fund all the business trips and things that I was trying to put infrastructure in place and all these different, I would have figured it out. I would have had to have figured it out. I would have talked to people. I would have fundraised.
Yeah.
I would have did what I had to do. Looking back on it, it was just easier to take all of my available cash to just fund what I felt like I had to do right then and there.
Right. Again, kind of growth mindset versus maybe, well, I wouldn't even say long-term planning, but just, super growth mindset, really.
Well, the immature Brent at 18 thought, it was long-term planning because if I have my cash flow built up to, let's call it $80,000 a month by the time I'm in my mid 30s, well, at that point I could invest way faster than someone else at their typical career path
Right.
towards my retirement goals. So if I could just get my business producing that level of income per month, I'd have discretionary money, I'd have investable money, I'd have charitable, philanthropic funds. I'd have
Right.
like all these things handled.
So
So I
as
just
grow
figured
as
I'd kick
fast
the
as
can in the road.
possible, and then don't worry about it because you're set. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Which immature Brent doesn't realize is that you get curveballs at different stage along the way, and then there's life things that happen and whatever. And it's like, sometimes it doesn't always happen like that. It doesn't mean that we haven't done really good things, but it has shown me how much, God has played a part in my journey and like really protecting me from myself in certain regards and teaching me things. But yeah, there's a lot there that we could talk about at a later date. But yeah, definitely. I would absolutely save just so I could then pivot into other types of investments while it's growing with
Right.
higher compounding capabilities.
Cool. So, as far as I guess current Brent, as opposed to 18 to 20 whatever year old past Brent, what are you currently focusing on financially in your life, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah. So we have different businesses now. I didn't list all of them, but in the ones that need marketing and advertising, because I we have our DSO operation that almost has been, I don't even know how to really describe it. We don't really advertise for that. We stay booked out pretty far in advance in the practice. Funnel Force, Glenn and I haven't advertised a whole lot because we've been the sales force behind our business growth. But now we're actually in the process of building a lot of that stuff. We're going to be running some display for ourselves, some TV, and building brand equity, because a lot of people hear that and they're like, "Oh, that's a nice term." Brand equity is something that I think, if you ever want to have an exit as a company, how people look at your business determines the value of how much they're willing to pay for your business. Of course, they're going to look at your books. They're going to look at your annual reoccurring revenue, and how much revenue can they continue to make after you sell as an owner, and is your
Right.
business, can they perpetuate the model even with you not present? Like a lot of things that are important to consider when you're looking to acquire a business. But how strong is the brand? There's businesses in town where, nope, we're gonna call that business because they've been in business for 40 years and we know they're good. That's
Wow.
brand
Yeah.
equity that you have to build up over time, but you can achieve it faster through marketing and advertising, and that's what a lot of people. It'll just be cool to
Yeah.
like play
Well,
it out. But
I think when it comes to marketing and advertising, I think a lot of people look at the price tag sometimes, and I'm not saying that Funnel Force is expensive. I mean,
sure,
I haven't priced it out myself, but a lot of people look at the price tag and go, "Oh, I don't want to play, or I don't want to pay that." But let's talk about return on investment. Well, what would a typical, right in the middle, 50% average client of yours make return on investment for someone who's working with you? I mean, if we're talking, hey, they're spending 1,000 a month or whatever it comes down to, what kind of return are we looking at there?
yeah. So that's a really awesome question. So in like the marketing space, what a lot of people don't really look at, we've only been in business 3.5 years,
Okay.
right? So some of the clients that we've had for, let's say, like, I think our longest client that we have currently with us that's still like running with us is like a 2.5 year old client. We have two of those. And those two clients now, whenever we get close to renewal time, they're already telling us we're going to spend more money next year. So we've changed our model like twice in the last like 2 years because we've tried to niche down. We used to do so many different things. Like you were talking about like websites earlier and all this stuff. Like really, we only do couple things. We'll like, again, I'll just kind of recap. We will do like media buying. So like in the advertising space, we'll do a social media service. We'll do basically like CRM, looking at someone's like lead capturing, just so they can remarket to their existing client base
Right.
and help lower their overall cost of their advertising dollar. And what we end up doing is when we look at all these different things, they don't have to buy all these services from us at once, but what ends up happening is that if we show them we can take care of them with one aspect of it, typically we earn their business in the other areas.
Gotcha.
So to answer your question, and then I'll kind of go on with where I was going. One of these businesses in particular, they're in a space where they basically make $4 to every dollar they give us.
Okay.
So that's a pretty good investment. But
So,
they've been running the first year they didn't make that. They didn't even make $2 to every dollar they invested with us. But by the time they got to like the 9 month mark, they started to make significant returns. I did a meeting yesterday talking to a business that they're a young upstart company, but they've already broken the 7 figure barrier, and they're young guys. And they're like, "Hey, we're looking to pay you 4% of our annual revenue." And I was like, "Okay, here's what we would do." And I would plan all of these. And they had a list of like 15 different things, like different marketing tactics that they wanted to bite off.
uh
And we're talking like this could easily be a 6 figure price tag. But they really appreciate me and my business partner Glenn, because I was like, look, we don't need to do all this stuff this year. We actually don't need to do but 30%, maybe not even 30% of these things this
Right.
year. And I mapped out a plan for them based upon like the sales funnel, like what awareness tactics should they be doing, what interest tactics should they be doing, and what intent tactics could they be doing. So what's really awesome about this is that I can save them money because I buy all these different types of media. Like I have all the data. Like we work with data companies that like show what companies should be doing at different stages of the funnel
Okay.
per industry.
That's
So for a lot of people that are buying media, they're buying from a salesperson that's selling one thing.
right. And it's the same thing over and over. And it's, hey, here's what we sell. Here's why you should do it
I did
versus,
it for a long time. I sold radio for a long time until 2015. Then I started selling all the digital products with it. But the thing is like I still got results and I know how to write good strategy. Like I had a really low attrition rate for compared to
so yeah,
other.
we bought radio ads with you. So
Yeah.
that's, I
Yeah.
think, how we kind of, well, we met before that, but yeah, we knew each other, but then that's kind of how we got more connected. But
Yeah. Absolutely. And so like there's a lot there. And so what happens over time is it's kind of like the S curve. People get more and more of a return over time as they stay steady with us. We have a gentleman in Florida. He's in the financial space actually, but he's in like the insurance space. He went from like spending like around like a $20,000 a year with us to like well up over six figures in about a year and a half because it worked that well for him. He hired a slew of people like within that next year, and he's done very well. And here's the thing: we're in Virginia, he's in Florida.
mhm,
So it really just depends. Like people are like, well, what is the average return on investment? Well, how long are you planning on sticking with the strategy? That's a better question for me to ask back, because if someone's not willing to give it 12 months, I'm going to send you somewhere else.
right,
And honestly, you probably heard me say this back when I was in my radio space. I didn't like selling anything less than 6 months. I typically sold 12-month stuff. And it's because like that brand equity is such an important factor there. Because if people can't think of your business name when they have the need for you, they're going to probably price check you. Hopefully they price check you, but they're definitely going to price check somebody. But if they can think of your name, they're going to call you.
right.
You know what I mean?
At least you're gonna get price checked, with
Yeah.
whoever else that they
But there's a
find.
subconscious thing where if they feel warm and fuzzy about you, that's worth something.
Right.
And subconsciously, if they're hearing you or they're seeing your ads or whatever the case is, they feel like they know you. And that's where the value comes. And so that's where we really start to kill it for our clients in that regard. And so now, I mean, we have some others that have been with us now for like, some coming up on like 9 months, a year. It's funny. I've got some social media clients I'm thinking of right now that literally like last month, I think one of them like that's been with us for like 4 months. As
Mhm.
of last month, they're like, "Hey, so how are the numbers looking?" And like, there's growth. This month, it started to like rocket ship up, and I'm just like, "Here's your report.
Here you go.
Yeah,
Check
here
it
you
out.
go.
Yeah.
Here you go." And if we hadn't even hired a professional videographer, I've been taking like the video for the reels and stuff on these things. It's not
Mhm.
like I mean, we had professional service like editing the footage for us, but now it's like we've got the guy shooting the content, editing the content, and that makes it like 10 times better right off the bat anyway. So like now it's like it's only going to get even better. So like we know this stuff works. I've got spent time with like Google getting like all my certifications and stuff,
I
and
love
like
it. Yeah.
going back to school like for these things so I can like look at the data and do the things that people that are selling like one type of media typically don't do because they're not required to. I'm not required to do this stuff to sell what I'm selling, but I want to be able to post that stuff and show people like, hey, yeah, I'm certified in analytics and looking at the data and looking at these deep numbers and being able to put this stuff together because there's so much value there.
Mhm.
All right. So you're probably looking for a different answer from me.
No,
So,
that was a great answer. I love that. Every second of it.
but at this stage, to answer your question, you're like, so at this stage, what are you looking to do financially? Build brand equity and funnel force. So I want people talking good about us in the community, but I also we're gonna do a lot of our own tactics that we've done in other places to pick up clients out of state. We're now going to do that in our hometown over the next couple months. So that'll be pretty cool. And then I honestly real estate's a big one.
I
I'm
love to hear
in
that.
and like, yeah, totally. And we've had a lot of discussions, and I've told a lot of people about you and what you offer, because obviously you have tools that sometimes, even if they have good bank relationships, it's like, it's really good to go to a loan officer first and be like, hey, David, like, what's my situation look like? We've talked about, doing investment properties and different things like that. My stage of life, I don't want to do this. I don't want to put together the syndicated deal,
Right.
but I've got friends that do it. I've got a buddy who's he's on his way to become famous right now. My buddy Derek, he's in the mobile
Yeah,
home
yeah.
park space.
He's down in Florida, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
We've
Not
talked
the
about
same
him.
guy I was talking about earlier
Right. Yeah,
with the
different. Yeah, we've talked
insurance.
about him before though in the past. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's doing phenomenal in that space. And so, like, like, he's one where, I've done like one small transaction with him, and I'm done some stuff with, like, you've probably seen like Cardone Capital and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So we've done little things here with that, but I'm still like sticking to my guns on, like, hey, I want to have chunks of money that I can kind of roll into syndicated investments. So I've got a couple different accounts where I'm like slowly feeding funds into, but that's what we're
But
doing, is just,
don't spend necessarily your own time on it. It's just, hey, let's do this on the side and focus on, double
yeah.
down on what I want to be doing, which is funnel force and everything
Well,
else.
yeah, and then young kids, and, I try to get off work every day by like 4 p.m. and, it's like,
Right.
spend time with them while they're young, because they're only young once. But I know as they get older and they don't want to hang out with dad as much, well, then it's like, then I'll feel a lot, more freedom to kind of run around and do some of these other things where I could probably go and do some of these hands-on
Right.
jobs, like value add type of investment opportunities with the real estate side of things.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool, cool. Yeah, no, I love it. So, and just circling back to like your comment about like for every dollar they spend, they're getting about $4 in return. I guess at that point, it's hey, how much do you want to make slash how much can you handle? I mean, do,
Yeah.
do you have the capacity to take on more clients in business, or are you at capacity? And I guess that's kind of what it boils down to at some point. Which, and I'm sure you already said it. The longer you stick with it, and I'm sure that's the case for marketing, advertising, kind of everywhere, but especially with funnel force, where you're drilling down to these niche, services, is the longer you stick with it, the better it is.
Yeah.
You see a return in the first year, great. What happens in the second year? It probably doubles or something close to it. So,
Well, here's the thing.
and
I
it
mean,
depends, I'm sure.
we're not captive agents. So the good thing is that if somebody has a budget with us and we start seeing that we can get the same results and we can dial back their dollars, we can then take part of their budget and then add a new tactic that's further down the sales funnel to basically entice their customers and get more aggressive at going after their customers from another angle. The whole idea is to make their marketing dollar go further over time. So now it's like this one company in Pennsylvania that I mentioned, they're in the agriculture space. And so,
Okay.
like, if we can then reinvest some of their dollars that we were putting in, like, let's say like a geofencing campaign where we were doing like a conquest style, like going after some competitors, well, maybe it's producing so well, we can justify taking a couple of dollars from that particular tactic and put it over into like meta ads and geo target a particular area. And then we can also, if that produces the way that we project it to produce, we could then go and maybe do a little bit here in like PPC after, I've got friends in the PPC space that like manage like 7-figure PPC spends. Like I've got friends in the meta space that manage we've had clients using our LinkedIn software that we have, where we almost did like a knowledge trade with them. Like, their part of their company was so big, they're spending like $250 to $350,000 a day on Facebook ads. So,
Wow.
like, so their Facebook team, he had a whole team of people. Like, I would talk to them and Glenn would talk to them like once a week, and we were just trying to like learn from them, because honestly, they're way more knowledgeable than like some of the Facebook courses that I've been exposed to. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Like, the stuff that they look at, the granular data,
Hmm.
and like local businesses that are spending like a couple $100 to like promote a post that did well, they're actually programming the algorithm against them and they'd never know it. It's crazy. But if they don't hire someone like us, they'll continually
They'll
break
never know it,
the
and they're just
algorithm
throwing
against
their money away.
themselves.
Yeah. All right. So there's like five things I want to like address there. So number one, PPC, for those who don't know, pay per click, right?
Yeah, pay per click. Yep.
Okay, which is effectively if people are clicking on your website, we're tracking that as far as like quote unquote like return on investment
Yeah,
or
you'd be spending
ROI.
right on the Google platform just to buy
Yeah.
pay-per-click ads. And here's the thing. I have another horror story I could tell you about pay-per-clicks. Like I have a client in the legal space that was using another vendor and they basically programmed the search algorithm in Google against them and they were spending buku dollars a month. I mean, like
Just to get the click that then resulted in no business,
sending
right? Yeah.
business to their competitors to the tune of like I can't even like if I, like it's crazy. It's like people's annual salaries, like good salaries they were spending monthly on PPCs. And here's the thing: the company was programming like sending business to their competitors. I'll just say that.
Okay. Yeah,
So
we
like
don't need names or tails, but wow. I believe it. I believe it.
so here's the thing. So if people don't know what they're doing and they're like, "Oh, it's too expensive to hire like a media agency or like somebody to be a media buyer for us." Yeah, maybe it's too expensive, but really it's not because you're saving time and frustration and money and headache and all these other things if you place the buy wrong. And there's so much there. So I mean, not to
Yeah.
like
No, there's a ton. I feel like we could go on this all day long. This kind of leads into another question, which is what do you wish every single client knew?
so two things. I want this to be a value add too for your listenership. The
Yeah.
first thing, this is free value. They should be able to determine their customer persona and like down to like I did a Google course recently where I was going through like foundations of like attracting your right customer persona to your business. I mean, they call it, use all these fancy words and everything, but basically it's like identifying your correct customer persona. So we basically did data pooling. So we would look at a spreadsheet of just raw data and we'd have to put together a customer persona based upon like what that business data showed. So, like, part of our homework or test assignment was pulling data, putting this all together, and like averaging it out and writing a report based upon what that persona should be.
Mhm.
Most businesses never do it because they don't have access to the data. If they invested in a tool like Proforce, like one of the things that we offer, it's like $100 a month, $300 a month. They could pull in all this data and automate it, pull it all in, and then they could literally look at who's buying from them on a regular basis. They could look at demographic information. They could look at all these things if it was programmed right and we had the right questions set up for them. We could harvest that information and then we could make their marketing way more efficient for like peanuts, for like we're talking like next to no money. But businesses just are like, oh, I don't know, it's expensive, and I'm like, no, it's not because you're spending so much more money than that on your time and on spending money on tactics you don't need because you're buying, like you think you're buying stuff in the marketing funnel that you need. You're
Mhm.
not. So defining your customer persona, and basically that boils down to like demographical information, income, what kind of music they like, what kind of car they drive, how many kids they have, like all this stuff. Because people think, oh, that's not important. It is. I just like again, I just got like done doing a whole like recertification on all this stuff. It's like one of the number one things that's so important. Like we're talking like when I'm trying to go after a company that's got like a 10-figure marketing budget, that's the number one thing they focus on.
Yep. Yep. So
So,
it comes down to like basically knowing your client and knowing what they need and who to be looking for. So you're not wasting your time on something that, like for someone rather, depending on the case, who's just never going to buy or
yeah,
never going to be a client.
if someone hires us, the first thing I do with them is not, hey, you need to write me a check. It's, hey, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna take an hour, we're gonna figure out, do you have the right customer persona? Because 9 times out of 10, I bet you they don't.
Okay.
And so then the next thing is, what have you purchased media wise? And this is more for my enjoyment so I can learn about them. But really it does tell me a lot of what I need to know about them and like what their
Right.
tendencies are because I'm going to learn a lot about the client at this point. What have you purchased money on? You want what's crazy? What a lot of people tell me, they've tried meta ads at like $500 to $1,000 a month. Most businesses will tell me this, and I'm like, all right, perfect. So how many times do you post weekly on Facebook and Instagram? And most of the time, not
Once
all
or
the time.
less.
Yeah, most of the time people are like, yeah, I don't know, like 2, 3 times a month, 4 times a month, and I'm like, all right, well, number one, stop spending money on Meta. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. And they're like, well, that's why we're hiring you. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Just don't do this. Like we've literally had clients that have like done stuff not with our blessing, and it's
Uh-huh.
like, don't do that.
Yeah. Stop, please. Help me help you,
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. But You can't control people, but you just try to do the best job you can to serve them. But here's the thing. It's like, well, here's why we tell them to stop. You have to give Meta enough data that they can amass about you and your viewership, like your customer persona base that is actually engaging with your stuff. Like there's so much data that Meta tracks. Like they actually can like track how long somebody's scrolling in their feed and stops on your post. So like
Uh-huh.
they know if people are like kind of interested based upon the number of milliseconds they like stop in that area, and like they know if they're like reading your caption or not. Like it's
It
crazy.
is scary how much they can tell. Like, I mean, if you've never pulled up your own like Facebook or Instagram stats, when we say Meta, some people don't know it's Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah.
It's what we're talking about. It's the Zuck companies. If you pull it up, you can literally download like an entire packet of information of everything, all the data that they have on you. And it is scary how accurate it is. So, as someone who in the past has done some ads on Meta suites, I mean, the amount of information you're able to target, like for me as a mortgage lender, I can target people by income, there are so many things, people who are just married, people who might be getting engaged, like people who might have a demographic that is more likely to be looking to buy a house soon. I can target that, and it is scary how accurate that is. So if you haven't done that, I would definitely encourage you to go check that out. Yeah, you may not sleep at night because it is a wild thing when you realize how much, Google, Facebook, Amazon, you name it, know about you just based on certain behaviors and certain, patterns that they can, relate to other people who are similar to you demographically, just, like Brent was talking about earlier. The demographics are just huge. So if you're not in the advertising marketing space, it's definitely something to check out because you will not sleep at night, at least for a night or two.
Yeah, I guess the last piece of free advice I had to like throw out there is that don't spend money on Meta boosting ads or trying to run Facebook ads, because it's tough because you're going against, basically, if there's not aggregated data in the Meta suite from organic post, it's only going to go off of your targeting categories that you select, and it's actually guessing. So it's guessing. So like if you don't have aggregated data built up, it's just like there's nothing for it to average your targeting criteria against. So it's just there's just a lot there. And if it's not good quality content that focuses on like if you're not talking to your customer persona, again, you're programming the Facebook algorithm against you. So a lot of businesses, they're just blatantly just wasting money, and it's
Yep.
sad. So
So, all right. So to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about maybe like our younger crowd here. So someone who's just getting started with a business, whether you're W-2 employee, if you don't know what W-2 is, like an hourly or salary employee working for a company, whether you're self-employed or like a contractor, which would be like 1099 employee. What would you, for someone just getting started in whatever business they're doing, what would be some advice you might give in that front, as far as should you explore advertising marketing yourself, or should you look for a company that's already kind of got a brand that might help get you started? Where would you say you would be in that front, as far as it relates to, marketing and advertising what you do, but also like if you were starting over, what would you look for?
So like you're wondering like if someone was just getting started in like their working day world or
Yeah.
in a business.
Yeah. So like if I were gonna go be a real estate agent right out of school, or if I wanted to, get into some sort of business, something or another, would you prioritize networking? Would you prioritize marketing, advertising, or some sort of combination? Like where would you start?
So I think
Sorry, this is a
knowledge.
curveball. I
No, it's
didn't,
okay. So knowledge is
script
power,
this one.
right? No, it's okay. Knowledge is
Yeah.
power. So I would encourage somebody, like if you were like a brand new, like out of school, but you wanted to go and be a realtor, I would tell you to go and meet with someone like me, whether it's me or someone else that has some type of media agency of some sort. They're going to give you a ballpark on like services, costs, and all the things. And you'd probably want to interview like a couple different ones based upon like who you click with, because you also have to like work with your media agency. Like it's not like, hey, just do all of our stuff. You have to like have like a working understanding of like, hey, do I like this person I'm going to work with? That's important. But then, yeah, absolutely. In-person networking, I think, is big, like chamber events or different types of networking events. Huge. And they're all over the place. And if you're on like LinkedIn at all, like, social media, you should absolutely start there, because over time, if you can create a digital footprint on social media, like doing things in your space, people will start to follow that and they'll get to follow your journey. And as you become more and more credible in your space, you'll have a fan base already built. And then as time goes on, if you figure in the beginning, oh, I can't afford to work with an agency, which how do you know if you don't go and ask? That's the first thing, because you may find that it's way more affordable based upon what you need. That's the thing I would tell them, because that's why knowledge is power. If you don't go and you just assume, well, you might start spending money in a bunch of areas that you could have easily hired an agency and been way further down the path than not. So definitely have conversations with people that could help you. That would be the first thing. And then, yeah, I would make no assumptions. I would just try to network as much as I could in person, which is one of the things I did when I was in my early 20s. And then also, social media is big. LinkedIn's really big, and there's tons of free resources out there. I mean, heck, go follow my business partner Glenn on LinkedIn. If you want free LinkedIn advice, he posts it daily, and then every Friday he's got his new newsletter that talks to people about how they can be more successful on LinkedIn. And he's got like 17,000 followers, and he's got a course that's getting ready to come out, all kinds of stuff, and it's so good. And then one of our services that he represents is basically like an automation service for some of that stuff on social media. So like you can automate it for white collar prospecting, so you don't have to spend hours behind your computer. You can stay out with your clients face to face doing stuff, but then also have, stuff running in the cloud in the background prospecting for you, so you're kind of killing two birds with one
Yeah, you can
stone.
have that social media presence with that. Yeah, so don't be an expert. Don't try to be, jack of all trades, expert in everything. Like defer or farm out what you can or what you're not best at. Maybe
100.
yeah, and that's definitely something I would agree with. I mean, when I got started, I called it pounding pavement. I'd be out trying to meet anyone and everyone I could, network with anyone and everyone I could. Eventually, I realized, okay, there's certain folks who are gonna probably be able to send me more business than others. So I started focusing on certain categories there. But figure out who is a good, I guess, lead source for you. Focus on that, and then anything that you don't have to do. At least me personally, I would say try to find a way to not have to do it. So
Yeah.
if marketing and advertising isn't your job, let someone else do it. I mean, that's gonna take a huge burden off your plate, and you're not gonna have to worry about screwing it up and spending money that you don't need to spend, as you just said, if you don't have to. So let's make sure we're getting the most bang for our buck, I guess.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. Well, what as far as personal budgeting, what would you say are some of the most common mistakes you might see people make, especially when they're, first out of school? Like, hey, maybe I've got student loans, maybe I had to get a car for, commuting to work or wherever you might be financially in your life. What would you say are some of the pitfalls or traps to maybe avoid or be careful of?
Yeah, something that I wish I would have done. I would have like just drove the car I had in high school into the ground before buying a different vehicle. And it wasn't like it was a professional vehicle. It was like a lime green Honda Civic that sounded like a weed eater. I would have driven that thing into the ground, knowing what I know about finances now. I would probably spray painted the thing like black or gray or something, just to like, tone it down a little bit if I had to.
Uh-huh.
People, I mean, people laugh at that. Like, honestly, no one cares what you drive. Nobody cares. And so for me, I went and I spent a bunch of money and I got a Lexus sedan. It was used, but still, I was just like, why did I do that? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, I don't even. And granted, I paid it off pretty quick, but like at the same time, it's like I could have like saved so much money with instead of doing that.
Uh-huh.
So like I justified it as like my, start foot into the business world. Oh, look, I've got a
Yeah, like take me seriously because I drive a nicer car than I used to. It's like, well, how did they know? They didn't know what you used to drive, right? Like
100%.
that's
100%. So
so.
yeah,
Well, I
that's
was
really one of the big things I'd tell someone starting off. Yeah.
yeah. Well, okay, same.
Don't get a new
And
car.
one of the first things I did when I started my job was I wrote an article on LinkedIn, I think, and one of my big pieces of advice, and I'm still proud of this today, was don't go buy a brand new car just because you got your big boy, big girl job. Like that is not your first priority. Like, figure out something else. And I know we've talked, actually, I guess one of the first few times we met was at like a network marketing event, and you were like the featured speaker that evening. And a friend of mine from college actually had drugged me out to that. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. She called it like a leadership conference thing. I was like, I don't know what's going on. And then you were up there talking. I was like, oh, hey, I know him. And one of the things that you said that stuck out to me, and gosh, this is probably like 9 years ago now, something like that. You said, I bet everyone here knows how much money they make. And I was like, okay, yeah. And then you're like, how many of you know how much money you spend? And I was like, wow. I mean, at that point, I felt like I had a pretty good grip on my finances, but I sat there and I thought about it. I was like, I bet a lot of people have no clue. Going back to the car thing, like, why are you about to go drop, shoot, anymore? It could be 200 to $1,000 on a car payment. I mean, I pull people's credit every single day, and the amount of people I see with like multiple $500 to $800 car loans is astounding. I mean, we're talking you like if you have two car loans like that, you're talking a mortgage payment potentially,
It's
depending on what
insane.
what purchase price you're at. It's like, why are you going to spend that much money on one or two vehicles when you could buy like an asset that actually appreciates? And for anyone who doesn't know what appreciation is, it means it goes up in value, not down. I mean, to me it sounds insane, but at the same time, a lot of people's parents don't teach them that. So, talking about the whole car thing, what are your thoughts on that? Can you, elaborate further? Like, obviously, you said you would drive that car into the ground. I mean, nobody cares. Like you said, no one cares what car you drive. So why are you trying to go out of your way to impress people who don't care about you basically at all, or have no clue who you even are?
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, you buy a new car, it goes down in value maybe 20% right off the bat. I mean, here's the thing. I've got clients that are car dealerships. Okay. I'm not, if you want to go buy a new car, you can pay cash for it, whatever, you go do that. And, and I could send you some good people. But if you're just getting started, my advice would be drive what you have. Number one, pay it off. If it's not paid off first, pay it off, because whatever your interest rate is on a car, it's not what real estate is. Um, you want to make sure that that's in check. And so you want to make sure that you've got a good value there. Now, some people, it's like, if you've been established for years and you got good credit and you can go and get 0% down on a new truck or something like that, and you're writing it off through your business, that's a whole different conversation. So, but if we're talking to someone that's just getting into the game of life, just, yeah, drive what you got, make sure it's paid off, and basically try to save as much as you can, like what Dave Ramsey would say in that case. Because if you're doing that, you're going to have cash set aside for when you do have an investment opportunity, like to buy a foreclosure or to get in on a syndicated deal or to buy your first rental, or you want to do an Airbnb. If you blow all your cash on the down payment for a new car, well,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
you're just prolonging your income that you can generate outside of your day job. So
And I'm a fan of leverage being like the eighth wonder of the world.
uh
Leverage, aka financing, using other people's money to buy something, when used correctly,
yeah, like an
can
asset.
make or break your entire life. I mean, like if you're buying a rental unit and you finance it so that you're not saving up and paying cash way down the road for it, you can make money and cash flow it right now, and you can benefit from the appreciation much longer than you would otherwise. So leverage is a great tool when used correctly. I guess would be one of my giant pieces of advice to give to anyone, really, no matter what stage of life you're in. Let's hit some kind of generic stuff. Have you seen, in your experience and working with clients of all different ages in marketing and advertising, you've got some older established folks, you've got some maybe younger entrepreneurs, like someone fresh out of school, basically starting their own business. Is there any different advice you would give to them depending on like what stage of life they're in? Or have you seen any shifts in mindset on how they think about money or expenses? Do you think, younger folks might be a little bit more hesitant to jump into something or spend money, whereas the older seasoned folks are more like, hey, I can tell I'm going to get a return on investment. Let's do it. Or what have you seen in that space?
It's interesting. I don't talk to people a lot about their like their personal financial outlook anymore. I used to all the time because of
Okay.
my first business that we met through. Now I hear about it through some of my friends. I've got a buddy who's a financial advisor that worked on Wall Street for 15 years, working for basically a hedge fund or capital fund, billions of dollars under management, assets under management, all this stuff. And so like I take a lot of things that he says really seriously. And he's told me that typically a lot of people when they're approaching like retirement age or they're in that season of life, you're generally like looking to conserve your principal, your assets, and you're not trying to like withdraw past a certain percentage. And I get
Mhm.
that. My take is that I've always wanted to have enough cash or principal to where I never have to touch the principal. I can always just live off the dividends. And I think that if people had that thought process with how they move towards their golden years, I think that they would have a lot more realistic expectations for like, how they could live the way they want to live and they should try to earn to fuel that. I think it's kind of dangerous that people think that they should, try to have like enough money that they can withdraw at a certain percentage until they
And yeah.
pass away. I
So
think that's scary to me.
yeah, absolutely. Completely side note here. Is that Ash or are we talking about
Yeah,
someone else? Okay.
yeah, I'm talking about
Yeah. So,
Ash.
I thought we knew the same. Yeah. I know we know a couple of the same advisors, but I figured that might be who you're
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah, he's awesome. Yeah,
He's
he's a wealth of knowledge.
he's phenomenal. He's actually someone I hope to have on this podcast at some point.
Yeah, he'd love that. He'd
Um,
be great.
yeah, he would. I mean, he's got so much insight. So that I guess kind of goes into another question as far as like financial stress, and that's what you said is resonates so well with me because I always said like if I won the lottery tomorrow, right? If I got $1 million or shoot anymore with inflation, $2 to $5 million, whatever that would be. If I had this like giant chunk of change and I stuck it in something that earned me, 5 to 10% that I could live on forever, how would that change my life or what would I do? But how do you kind of get to that spot or how do you like shift your mindset, I guess, to say, hey, what do I need to do to get there so I can retire comfortably? Because my goal isn't to work until I die.
Yeah,
And I
right.
feel like most young people don't want to do that. A lot of us, I say us, I'm getting kind of old now, but back when I was in my 20s, I was like, oh, I'm going to retire at 40. So, what would you say to focus on to get there? Obviously, make a lot of money and put it in, investments, but that's a generic kind of answer. So, is there anything in particular or specific that you would focus on, or is it developing business, kind of doubling down on what you do? Where would you go with that?
Yeah, I would tell somebody that they got to cut unnecessary expenses. Basically, live like you make half of what you actually make. That would be my advice. And then what you would do with like all of this extra money is you do your charitable giving, you would do your 10% savings. And when people hear me say savings, I don't mean just like stick it in the savings account or even just the S&P 500 or like an index fund. I don't even mean that. But basically they have to set it aside so they don't see it in their bank account.
Don't blow it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then that could go into syndicated real estate, that could go into 401k, that could go wherever. In fact, if they're like an employee and they've got a 401k match at their business, I'd probably try to max that out. But here's the thing, if you're living like you're making half of what you actually make anyway, all that extra money could be discretionary like investment money for like short-term gain.
Right.
So like you have your long-term savings plan, so like you cover that base. But if you can invest your basically half of what you're making now into something else that can generate like another $1,000, $2,000 a month, maybe a year from now, well, if you do that 10 times over the next 10 years, you can make another $10,000, $20,000 a month 10 years from now. But most people don't want to do that because, man, I make good money. I should drive a nice car and I should
Yeah.
have a Louis Vuitton purse and I should do this and I should do that. And it's like, listen, that's fine if you got that stuff. But like,
Is you get caught up with like the keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing. Like, oh, look at my neighbor, they're doing this. Maybe I should
this
do it
day and
too.
age, like it was one thing when we were in the 90s and everyone was like, oh, look, Pimp My Ride and MTV Cribs and all that
Uh-huh.
stuff. And if you had spinners on your car, you're cool. Well, here's the
Yeah.
thing in this day and age, listen, if I'm making as much passive income as that person's making in their day job, that's cool.
Oh yeah, I think that's, hey, my passive income. And people talk about passive income all the time, and I mean, a lot of people have different opinions on it. Personally, for me, real estate investments where my passive income comes from. Like every single month, I'm getting a check from the couple townhome rental properties that I have, and I don't do anything. Like I've got a property management company that puts tenants in it. They collect the payments every month, and then it hits my bank account on the 12th every single month. I'm not doing anything. I bought it, and I bought those with, kind of one of the myths I would bust. A lot of people think I need to save up and get 20% down payment to buy a house. No, you don't. I bought my first townhome 3% down, bought my second one 5% down. Both of them cash flow double what my mortgage payment is right now today, and I've only had them for like 5 or 6 years. So I mean, there's a way you can do this, and we can talk about that, in depth some other time. But like, don't get caught up in thinking, oh, I've got to save money to go buy real estate. No, you don't. You can get in for less than 10,000. And if you have questions on that, call me. That's something I can help with.
Yeah.
But as far as a myth that you might have experienced in your life, what might be like a money myth that you would like to bust, whether it's, personally or whether it relates to advertising, marketing?
Yeah.
A lot of people say, oh, it takes money to make money kind of thing. Is that something you've experienced, or are there ways around that?
Yeah. So in like just business space in general, if I'm talking to like small, medium-sized business, it would be that I believe that they should have some foundational knowledge inside of the marketing space, just so they understand enough of their own business sales funnel so that they don't buy the myth that, oh, it's too expensive to work with like an agency or somebody to do our media buying or
Yeah.
something like that. Because at the end of the day, the whole relationship only works if I'm making them money.
Right. Because
And
otherwise they're not going to keep working with you. So
exactly.
it's a win-win, or we're not going to work together.
Yeah, 100%. So the whole thing is like I have to make money. So and of course I got to make money to stay in business. So there's a trade there. They're paying me for my expertise, and because I've got the expertise, I deliver results on their advertising spend.
Right. That they would otherwise maybe take years to figure out themselves if they
Or
were trying
never,
to,
because
or never, right? Because
here's the thing.
they don't see it.
The line I got pitched all the time by people when I was in the radio space was, I've tried radio, it didn't work. And I'm like, well, number one, all forms of advertising work because it just depends on where you're at in the business funnel. And how you put an ad together helps position where that triggers customer engagement in the funnel.
Right.
So like if you're having problems getting people to buy and you ran a branding ad on radio, like, well, there you go. Like, I mean, you're not running the right tactic for what you're trying to do. So like there's just so much there. But like trying to get somebody just to listen when they think that you're just trying to sell them something, it's almost next to impossible. So like the myth is there are experts in this space because or there's businesses in the space because it is a thing. Like it takes a lot of data to crack the code. And so like if you just pay someone that already has the code cracked, like I mean
Yeah.
that's what you got to
That's
do. Yeah.
I tell people that all the time in my space. I mean, most people will finance a home somewhere between 0 and 10 times throughout their life, right? On average, it's like every 7 years, once you've bought a home, you'll either refinance or sell and buy something else, something like that. Eventually, they probably pay it off, potentially, depending on, the person. So 0 to 10 finance transactions throughout the average person's life. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, I've done hundreds, if not at this point, maybe 1,000 mortgage loans. I've seen way more transactions than most people will ever see in their entire life, or will know people that have seen in their entire life. And then you get people coming in who have listened to, oh, well, my dad says the rate's too high, or my mom says that I shouldn't be paying, points for this or whatever. Like, or hey, I don't want to pay closing costs. What is like, okay, being the expert, I can tell you, your mom or your dad has only done this 4 times. They don't know what they're talking about. Rules have changed, laws have changed. There's
You did
so
it
many
four
things
times
that
before
go
lunchtime today.
right. Exactly. I've already locked 5 loans since last week, and you're talking about your dad giving you advice, who's has only bought 2 houses ever. It's like, yeah, I didn't get to where I am by giving bad advice. So
Yeah.
please,
Yeah.
please listen to me. And I'm sure that's the same way in the marketing advertising world is, look, I've done this so much more than you could probably ever do when it comes to meta or you name it, as far as the ad space. Here's what I know works. I can show it to you. I've got the stats to prove it. You know, here's all the data. And you give people that and suddenly they start listening a little bit.
Yeah.
Or hopefully they do, and if they don't, then maybe that's, maybe that's not the good client. With that being said, what any book, podcast, tool, I'm gonna jump around. I said book, and it reminded me. I know one of the things we were talking about at that network marketing event that we were both at, you had talked about Robert Kiyosaki. One of the very first books I read out of college was Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I would recommend for everyone to read. But that was where my eyes really opened, because I feel like I learned more from business books and reading business books than I ever learned from a college. And I learned more from reading business books after college than I ever learned in any of my business or economics courses. And Rich Dad Poor Dad was one of the ones that opened my eyes. Was, hey, here's what an asset truly is. A lot of people will list like a house as an asset. Well, no, break it down. Does a house put money into your pocket every month, or does it take money from your pocket every month? If you were to lose your job tomorrow, are you writing a check for it, or is it writing you a check? And that's what you kind of have to look at versus, asset versus liability. And when you break it down like that, you're like, oh. And then he kind of breaks it down further of use assets that generate wealth or generate cash flow to buy things that you want. So like when I bought my first car after college, it was from passive income that I used, like I call it a quarterly bonus check that I got, and I used that to buy my next car.
Yeah.
So I used the passive income to buy something that I wanted, like a car, like we were talking about earlier. So are there any books aside from Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I know we've both read, any other books that you would strongly recommend for someone just getting started?
So somebody getting started in business, yeah, I got a book, Traction by Gino Wickman. That
Okay.
book is just sick. It
Okay.
outlines so much for like scaling in business and whatnot. If somebody wanted to have like, if you want it more like financial focused, let me go through my Audible Rolodex. I'll tell you real quick. I gotta like tell you what. If somebody wants a really good book just to help get them started in like their space, they ought to go through.
Got a bajillion books over here on my desk, but here's a really great one that I'll show right here.
I wasn't even going to talk about that today.
This one, I don't know if you recognize this beautiful, right here. This beautiful guy right here, Brent Stone,
That's
one of
amazing.
the authors on Brand Sharks. Great book
That's
right
funny.
there.
So this will be really good. There's a book called The YouTube Formula by Daryl Eves.
Okay.
He's a guy that Glenn met at a conference in Florida like 3 years ago. This guy, just to give you the quick rundown, I think he's got like a 7-figure retainer before you start paying him for your
Wow.
like coaching that you get
Okay.
from him. He coached guys like Mr. Beast, who has like multiple billion-dollar YouTube brands. Like Mr. Beast is one of his clients.
Wow.
Like he only holds like I think like 10 or 15 clients a year or something like that. I don't know. But Daryl wrote this book. Glenn talked to him in person at this event in Florida like 2 or 3 years ago. Nicest guy, Glenn said. And I got the book and I was like blown away. But like it talks about like YouTube and like how like the YouTube formula and how you should start a YouTube channel and all this stuff. And businesses, I mean, that's something that businesses could do. Like now, if you didn't want to go through reading the book and all that stuff, you could hire somebody that knows all that space to start a YouTube channel for your business. But basically, like Google has invested billions into the YouTube platform, and it's like the next search engine to Google.
Mhm.
So AI is gaining traction, sure, but YouTube is there. I mean, it's an educational center. Like people go there for training courses now than hardly anywhere else. It's crazy. Like there's so much stuff that can be done for businesses through there. That's something else that would be a really interesting read for a young professional or an entrepreneur. That and Traction. Traction is like if you want like how to organize, like business structure and put together all. I mean, I don't even know how many books I've read in that space, like business leadership, business books, whatever. Traction's one of the best for sure. But then the YouTube Formula is just a really great book. I don't get anything for promoting either of those books, by the way, but like they've been phenomenal for sure.
Cool. Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's I guess all the questions I mostly have. And anything else you want to say? Any parting words or advice for, I guess, whether someone's been in the financial, the grown-up adult space for 20 plus years, or someone just getting started? Any advice that you've got to share?
No, I'd probably just say they need to talk to you about, getting some commercial real estate in their portfolio before it gets too late for that.
Well, yeah, that'd be great. just for the record, I don't do commercial real estate, but I can at least talk to you a little bit about it. But yeah,
or some residential real estate that
right,
they
yeah, I
can
would say
do.
rental units,
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah.
I would say don't be scared to make mistakes. Action is going to get you further than just overthinking it and over planning. That was probably one of the things I struggled with the most. Was I would, I read all these books. I was like, oh, I'm going to formulate this great plan. Here's how I'm going to map it out, and then I finally realized, you know what, you just got to go do it. And if you mess up, especially if you're young, you got time, you can fix it. Just try not to make any crazy, super like, don't buy a piece of crap rundown property that you have no hope of fixing. Like, don't go try and DIY it if you don't know what you're doing in that space. But you buy a house or something and oops, maybe you overpaid for it. Okay, hold on to it. It'll fix itself over time.
Yeah.
I would say don't be afraid to make mistakes, especially small mistakes, and don't be afraid to just give something a shot. So this is my first time filming a podcast episode. Just get out there and do it. I don't know what I'm doing at all. It's going to probably take me 2 weeks to edit this. I still got to figure out, how I'm going to post it to any podcast hosting servers and RSS feeds and everything else. But hey, here I am just jumping into it. Let's get it done. Well, thank you so much for being on this, and shoot me your links and we'll get that posted.